Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the J Lounge. Of course, you guys know I am your hostess with the mostest, aka Simone Jackson, Miss J, here to bring you guys another wonderful episode of the J Lounge. Everyone knows out there, the J Lounge is a celebrity-based podcast show where we talk with celebrities about various topics and discussions. I am very, very excited to be introducing my next guest. He's an author, he is a ghostwriter, editor, and writing coach, and he is here with us today. I am very, very honored to be speaking with him. Everyone, please give a super, super warm welcome to Michael Coffino. Hi, Michael.
Greetings. Thank you for that introduction.
Oh, no problem. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. Thank you. Really good.
Oh, I appreciate you doing this with me today. I appreciate you being here. We're really excited.
Cool. Me too.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and fire the first question at you. What began your passion for writing?
That's an interesting question because it's not a question I've ever asked myself. So thank you for putting it to me and making me think.
Good. I like that.
I think the light was lit in my second round of college, and I say second round because I dropped out of school, was in the service, came back, and when I came back, I had a real deep hunger for learning and academics, and I became a voracious reader. I mean, in the typical description, I read everything, and I read constantly. In fact, it's probably, thinking back, this is a little embarrassing. I used to carry a dictionary with me. Yeah, because I used to read heavy stuff, the polysyllabic writings of the Victorian age, like George Eliot and Charles Dickens and stuff like that. And I used to always bring it, I always had a dictionary in my satchel or in my car or wherever I was. I really fell in love with words. And, I fancied myself a wordsmith. I really wasn't at the time. I just kind of showed off my vocabulary. But then when I started practicing law, I became, a legal writer, and then I kind of morphed into an extracurricular. I used to write roasts for people. They were these caricatures of people's futures at anniversaries and birthdays and that sort of thing. And they were pretty well received. So I realized at the time, this is something I want to do. And the question became when I would, have the courage to take the leap. It took me a long time. I didn't really engage in the professional writing industry until in my late 60s. So it took a while, but I think the germ was in that second round of college.
Oh, wow. And, I don't think it's embarrassing that you carried a dictionary around, because I used to read the dictionary a lot when I was younger. I think for the similar reasons. I just wanted to expand my vocabulary. I used to spend like almost 2-3 hours a day reading a dictionary, like no lie, no shame, just to be able to get different words and just learn, just expand my vocabulary and everything. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, cool. Well, that we have good company there then.
Yes, we do. We do. Going on to the number 2 question. What type of stories do you like to tell, and why?
Well, I've got my hands in a lot of different things. And I think to answer that question, I would answer it in 2 parts. Obviously, I just, as you know, today is the release of my debut novel. And so it was my first handed fiction, other than those roasts I used to write. And I love writing, the stories that I have written in fiction, but I love it because I have the freedom to create the characters the way I envision them, the way I feel them, the way I see them, and what I want them to say and who I want them to be. And that freedom, that storytelling freedom, and that includes dialogue and all the things that go with building a character arc in a book, is something I love. But I also, as you mentioned earlier, I ghostwrite. I write memoir for people, and sometimes I'm a co-author. Sometimes I'm just a true ghostwriter in the background. But that I love for a different reason. That's a challenge professionally, to help people write their stories the way they want them written, in the voice they should be written in. And it's not about how I want to write them, although obviously I have impact on how it gets put together, but it's really the challenge of finding their voice for their story. And I love that about being a ghostwriter. When I first started doing it, it wasn't easy because I would default to my own style of writing. And I've had clients say, Michael, that doesn't sound like me. and that's part of the process of learning how to capture someone's voice. So I think I would, both fiction and memoir present different challenges and rewards, and those are the ones that are most important to me.
Oh, love it. Love it. I love a good memoir. Not gonna lie, I think one of my favorite memoirs I've actually ever I'm sorry, ever read was Memoirs of a Geisha. That's one of my
Mhm.
favorite memoirs to read ever. I've read that almost a good 10 times, not gonna lie. So I'm with you on that one. Going on to number 3 question. In your opinion, Michael, what's some of the most awarding and most difficult aspects of being an author?
Well, they're not the other sides of the coin together. They're very different. I mean, the rewards for me I think, is the affirmation of seeing my own creative expression. When you write and rewrite and refine and leave it simmer for a while and come back, to see how what you're writing is changing before your very eyes. I just fascinate with having a sentence that I spend, an hour on, or paragraph. And I think probably the most rewarding part of writing for me is seeing that process unfold and knowing that it may be painful for a while. It may take a while to get to where you ought to be, but it's going to get there eventually. And just watching it happen is probably the most rewarding thing. The difficulties, of being an author are several. And part of it depends on what your goals are. So probably, monetizing a writing career is not easy. It's really difficult to make money as a writer. I mean, I'm not telling you anything most people don't know. But if you want to have a writing career, you have to have a game plan about how you're going to monetize it. And there are ways to do it. I mean, there are a lot of creative ways to do it, particularly given the social media culture we're in. But it's not simply just putting out words and stories. You need to have a game plan. That's a difficult process. The other thing that's difficult about it is the promotional part of book publication. When I first started writing, I thought, oh, yeah, I'd write my book and I'm good to go. But it's really the second phase, finding an agent, finding a publisher, promoting your book, and doing all the tiny things to market and promote that you have to do to get your book out there is a really, emotionally draining money pit process.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy at all. And I'm going through it now with my novel, Truth is in the House, which is, again, is getting released today. It is released today. I've been working hard on the promotional aspect for several months. And today is another example. Today we're, posting an ebook discount, the promotional thing all over the place. So promotion is a really difficult part. I mean, the other thing about writing, and this is really an ego-based thing, is, recognition. There's so many people writing today. There's so many books getting published. There's been a swelling of the publishing industry. Now we have self-publishing, we have hybrid publishing, we have all these independent publishers in addition to the big five, even though the big five dominates the market. But there are so many people who want to write and get published that you have to be realistic about your recognition. It's nice to have friends and family tell you how good you are and say, I love your book. And every now and then it's nice to get a book award, Truth in the House has gotten 3 already. And that's good stroke, but it's a difficult process. And if you're in the industry to get recognized, it's a steep hill to climb. And that's a difficult process. It can be done, but your expectations have to be realistic.
Yeah, and I think I like that, being realistic, because like you said, the writing world can be very competitive. You just said you have a boom of different authors and writers and publishers, and so it can be competitive. And, like you said, the promotion aspects can be very, even in the social media world, it could still be a struggle because you still got to make sure your book stands out in the sea of all the other books that are also being promoted on social media. So it's hard. So
it's a very big world out there, the literary world.
Yeah, absolutely. Going on to the number 4 question. Name 3 authors that you admire and why.
I'm actually very selective in thinking about that question. I don't mean to be snobbish about it. They're just very selective. There are three authors that stand above to me. One is Oscar Wilde. Is probably at the top of the list. And I have read most everything he's written. I just absolutely love his sharp wit and his sarcasm and his elegance and how he depicts the human condition. He just was a special writer. I mean, so shameful that he was taken from us so early. Really, what happened to him was just absolutely outrageous. But at least we have a body of work that is not insignificant. And to me, he's my favorite writer. I also love James Baldwin, and I haven't read Baldwin in a while. I mean, I did a lot of reading of him back in college when I was in that era of wanting to learn everything. But his fluency of writing and his passion for everything having to do with justice and race is so impactful and inspiring. And I mean, he's probably as good as any writer that we've ever had in the literary landscape. And the last one is actually someone I've come to really love recently, which is Richard Russo, who's a fiction writer. And I love his works because he has this uncanny ability to describe human frailty and conflict and human imperfection. And and I will say this as well. The guy makes me laugh. I mean, I love reading his stuff. His novels tend to be long, but they're character driven. I mean, the stories are great too, but the characters, his ability to depict characters, I think is as good as anyone. And he would be the third person on my list.
I love those choices, especially James Baldwin, you said, right? Am I correct?
Yes, Baldwin.
Yes, I love James Baldwin too. I'm also actually a fan of Oscar Wilde. I actually like his stuff. I've been reading some of his stuff for a couple of years now. But yes, James Baldwin, if anyone that sounds familiar, of course, they made one of his books into a movie, If Beale Street Could Talk. Watched it, beautiful film, by the way. So those are wonderful choices. I like how they're very unique and distinct of each other. So just shows off your range, honestly, of authors that you like. So I really like that.
Thank you.
So going on to the number 5 question, where can the J Lounge audience follow you and your work? Where are you in social media, if you are?
Well, I mean, the main thing, of course, is my website, which is the lifeblood, which is at michaelcoffino.com. And I tend to keep everything there in terms of media events and that sort of thing, the books I'm publishing. I have a blog there as well that kind of had a hiatus for a while, but I picked it up again. I also have an Amazon author page. I have a Goodreads author page. I'm on Instagram and Twitter now. I got away from those things too, but promoting Truth is in the House has got me back engaged. I have a social media team, and they're taking care of some of my Facebook author page posts, as well as Facebook ads and Instagram posts and Twitter, that kind of thing. So, but the main thing is my website and those 2 author pages on Goodreads and Amazon.
Love it. And I highly encourage my audience to go and check out the website and go definitely check out, the books of Michael Coffino, and just make sure you just give him some support. So highly encouraged. All right, going on to the number 6 question. What future projects are you involved with that you can give a little dish about to the J Lounge audience?
Well, I guess Truth is in the House is not future anymore because it was released today, but the next one that's coming out, I guess qualifies. I co-authored a true crime memoir for a client, which is getting released in September. It's called The Demon in Disguise. That was a ghostwriting experience. I am getting book credit as co-author, so it's it's a little bit different in that regard, but it's same role, writing her story for her. A fascinating story. It's really about her experience from her eyes dealing with the criminal justice system. Her father was murdered and her mother was kidnapped about 20 years ago, and it took a long, long time to get the wheels of justice rolling. And that's what that book's about. Other than that, I'm pondering writing a screenplay for Truth Is.
Ooh.
And I'm starting my next novel, which I can't get into right now, but it's really, I'm not entirely clear on how it's going to evolve, but it's going to be based upon a extraordinary hitchhiking trip I took back in the 1970s with a friend of mine, and I'm going to fictionalize that experience.
Ooh.
So those are the things on the hopper, as it were.
Ooh, very intriguing. Very intriguing. Well, make sure you let us know here at the J Lounge, because we want to make sure we keep up with everything that you do.
Thank you.
Your future projects sound really riveting. I am like hooked, so make sure you keep us up to date with that because it sounds exciting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Going on to number 7 question. What goals do you still hope to accomplish in your career that you haven't yet?
I think there are two. One, I'm kind of on the track to do, as it is indicated. I've already written in the 6 years I've been doing this. I've written and published in a bunch of different genre. I mean, sport. I have 3 books on sports because I was a high school basketball coach that I've published. I've got all these memoir, ghostwritten and otherwise, that I have out there, and I've got the fiction. So I have a number of books in my head, both fiction and nonfiction, that I want to write. And so I think I want to continue, at least for the short term, building this very diverse portfolio of different genre.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at some point, I might just wind up focusing on fiction. I think that's likely the long term, but I like the idea of being able to be diverse and prolific in so many different areas. That's the one thing. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, I definitely want to write screenplays. I'm not quite ready to do that. I'm thinking about doing that for Truth Is in the House, but I have some learning to do. I just bought 3 books. I've got some webinars I'm watching. So I'm not going to jump into that without learning some of the basics. But I think long-term, starting to generate, once I learn how to do the art of the screenplay, then I think I'll probably start writing them, because I've got a number of ideas to do that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. And I'm definitely going to speak those goals into existence for you.
Yep.
All right. So going on to number 8, what are some of your passions outside of writing?
Well, putting aside my partner and my children, which are both passions, I think probably the biggest thing is I'm an exercise junkie.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I was an athlete my whole life. I played college basketball. Basketball became the game eventually for me. I played college basketball briefly before I got thrown out of school. That was that first phase of college I intimated earlier. Got into martial arts after that, and then into basketball coaching. But I hike regularly. I play pickleball. I work out with weights, so I do core work and that kind of thing. And, I exercise every day religiously. And so I think it's, in terms of just where my focus is, other than writing and people, it's the next best thing for me. It takes up the most time for me. And the other thing would be music. I mean, I could play guitar. I grew up in the rock and roll era. I was at Woodstock.
No way!
Yeah. Yeah, I've been to so many concerts. I don't go to concerts as much anymore. They're a little taxing, but I mean,
right.
I spent many a night at the Fillmore East in New York and other places back east when I was growing up there. So music became a touchstone for me, a spiritual touchstone, and I'm still very much into it. So those are exercise and music would be the 2 greatest passions, activity passions for me outside of writing.
Wow. That is incredible. I think you're probably one of the first people I've actually spoken to that have actually been to Woodstock.
I still have my ticket. I have my ticket, which of course you didn't need.
Do you really?
Yeah, I have it framed. It's in my office framed. Yeah.
Oh wow. Of course, never give that up. That's like history right there.
No,
Like,
that's
wow.
not going anywhere.
I've always imagined what it would have been like to be a teenager back then and to actually experience Woodstock just once.
Insane. insane. That's what it was.
He said it was insane. Wow. Yes. Yes. That's what everyone says who went. It was insane. But, but still that really birthed a movement right there. So
Yeah, absolutely. It was a special, and the fortuity of it, just to mention quickly, is that I was in the Army at the time. I happened to be home on leave that August in '69, coincidentally, when the concert was set. So it was meant to be.
Yes. Yes, it was. And the fact that you still have the ticket that many years later is even cooler to me, honestly.
The reason I have that ticket, my mother, God bless her, may she rest in peace. She knew that it had, some sort of value. She's the one who kept it.
Oh, wow.
And years later, gave it to me. She had found it in a drawer or something. And so, yeah.
Brilliant woman. Absolutely brilliant woman. Because
Yeah.
that is just the one piece of memorabilia I would never give away. Just can't. Just
Yeah,
can't.
no,
Too much history comes with this one little ticket right here. Too
absolutely.
much. All right, Mr. Michael, I just got two more questions for you. Going on to the number 9. In your opinion, what's the best book you've written so far?
I mean, it's a hard choice because for different reasons, but I think if I had to pick one, it's the one that's coming out today, Truth is in the House. And the reason it is because it really involved the whole of me. When you write memoir, you're writing someone else's story. When I'm writing my sports books, I'm contributing to people's learning and stuff like that. It's more me trying to reach them and that sort of way. And I'm also telling their stories. All my sports books are full of stories, but this particular piece of fiction was all about how I can put together a narrative from my eyes. And I think the one thing I'm most proud about that book is that it's full of actual events that are fictionalized, none of which relate to the other. I took two main events and then others around that and created two characters, one white and one black, to develop a narrative around race. And I put together all these different historical events that many, some of them are created whole cloth. I mean, I created some scenes, but there's so many actual events in that book that are put together in one coherent narrative. And I think I'm most proud of that. The other thing I would just mention is probably the other book that's a close second is The Other Classroom, The Essential Importance of High School Athletics, which I wrote to make a statement about value-based athletic programs at the high school level and how important they are to the development of our youth post-education in terms of their own development of their own skills and professional development in the workforce and that sort of thing. And I'm pretty proud of that book, but I think Truth is in the House is probably the one that's my favorite right now.
All right. That's awesome. Truth in the House. I want to make sure all my audience go check that book out. It is, in Michael's words, the best book he's written so far. So make sure you guys check it out and show that book some support. So sounds like it's a really great book. All right. So going on to the number 10 question, our last question. Mr. Michael, any advice for upcoming authors trying to find their footing in the writing world?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And again, it depends on what people's ambitions are. I mean, I mentioned earlier the difficulty in monetizing a writing career and how you really need a game plan. You can't just write and hope it works out. You have to have a game plan. But the one thing I'd like to say is about the writing process. It's really important to learn from others, which is not to say you replace your judgment with theirs, but you want to learn from others. On the other hand, you have to learn to trust your own instincts. I mean, there are going to be times when you're going to get different points of view about how to handle something in your writing career or the content of your expression. You have to trust your judgment. And I think obviously it takes a while to feel comfortable with your own judgment in a writing path. But at the end of the day, it's all about how you want it to unfold. and even though you want to listen to people, you want to take it in, but you make the decisions. Trust what you think is the right thing. The other thing I would mention, which harkens back to your first question, is reading. You can't be a good writer unless you read a lot, and I mean constantly. You don't have to read everything. For example, one of the best writers in the country is Stephen King. I've read his book called On Writing, which is on writing, and it's brilliant and helpful. And I have a collection of his short stories, which I read, but I don't really like the genre he writes in. And so I don't read a lot of him. Okay. But I still read a lot. I've got 2, 3, 4 books going at a time. So if you want to be a really good writer, you have to be a great reader as well. And the last thing I would mention is this is the biggest challenge, which we talked about earlier. You don't want to eliminate your ego. It's important, but you want to learn to tame it. You want to submerge it. You want to be open. I'll give you a quick example. One of the great challenges in the writing process is what authors refer to as killing your own darlings. Getting rid of expressions, sentences, metaphors, whatever it is that you've written that was so beautiful when you wrote it, but when you look at it the third or fourth time, it may not really work in the context in which it's being used. The first time it happened to me, my first published book, when the publisher took out a sentence which literally was my favorite sentence in the whole book, I was aghast. I was so offended. But when I went back and reread the context, I said, oh, you know what? He's right. That sentence didn't belong. It was beautifully written, pat myself on the back, but it didn't belong. And that experience set me down a path of learning how to kill my own darlings and to take my ego out of some of my writing. It takes a while. When people give us feedback, sometimes we want it, but we don't want it unless it's what we want to hear. So one of the biggest challenges, I think, of being a reader is learning how to control not only your expectations, but your own ego.
I love that. And I hope every up-and-coming author really hears that advice and takes it to heart. You have someone who is very successful and who knows the hardship of the writing world. So please take it to heart. But Mr. Michael, it has been an absolute pleasure to be able to speak with you today on my show. It's been great. I appreciate your thoughts, and I am wholeheartedly believe that my audience is going to go support you and your books.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's been an honor to talk to someone who's actually, not gonna lie, been to Woodstock. That to me, honestly. That's
there you go.
My whole day.
There you go.
So, but yes, I highly again encourage my audience. Please go make sure you go to the Michael Coffino website and check out his books and just give him support. He writes amazing books, and just check them out. So, but of course, you guys know I've been your hostess with the mostest, Miss J, aka Miss Simone Jackson, with another great episode of the J Lounge. I'll be back with another great episode for you guys soon. But until then, I want to thank my guest, Mr. Michael Coffino. I want to thank everyone for listening. Till then,
thank you.
I'll be back soon. Bye.
Take care.